Marcus Chen stared at the empty side of the bed, his fingers tracing the faint indentation in the pillow where Lyra's head had rested just hours ago. The bioluminescent scales she occasionally shed still glimmered faintly on the sheets, a painful reminder of what he'd lost. In the crib beside him, their daughter Arya, half human, half Zentari, cooed softly, her tiny fingers reaching toward the morning light filtering through the viewport. The note on the kitchen counter was brief, written in Lyra's elegant script that seemed to dance across the page. "I'm sorry. They're calling me home. Our worlds aren't ready for this. Take care of our star." Marcus had met Lyra 3 years ago at the orbital trade station where he worked as a mechanical engineer. She'd been part of the Zentari diplomatic envoy, and their connection had been instantaneous, a spark that transcended species, culture, and the vast emptiness of space itself. The Zentari were known across the galaxy for their ethereal beauty, skin that shimmered like opals, eyes that held entire nebulae, voices like crystalline music. But Lyra had been more than beautiful. She'd been brilliant, curious, and kind. Their relationship had scandalized both communities. Humans were still newcomers to the galactic stage, barely tolerated by older civilizations. The Zentari Council had been particularly vocal about genetic contamination and cultural degradation. When Lyra became pregnant, the opposition had reached a fever pitch, but they'd persevered. They'd built a life together in a modest HAB unit on Station Perseverance, planning for a future where their daughter could bridge 2 worlds. Now, as Arya began to cry, Marcus lifted her from the crib. She was beautiful, impossibly so, with her mother's opalescent skin and his own dark eyes. Small bioluminescent patterns traced her arms, pulsing gently with her heartbeat. She was also completely dependent on him. The first weeks were brutal. Zentari infants required a specific protein found only in their mother's milk, or so the medical databases claimed. Marcus spent 72 hours straight researching, contacting xenobiologists, and reverse engineering a synthetic formula. He failed twice, watching helplessly as Arya weakened, her luminescence dimming. On the third attempt, drawing from human agricultural techniques and stubborn refusal to accept defeat, he succeeded. Arya drank and her glow returned. Marcus wept with relief. The station's other residents watched with varying degrees of sympathy and judgment. Some humans muttered that he'd brought it on himself, getting involved with an alien. Some aliens whispered that the child was an abomination. But others, other humans mostly, they helped. They brought food. They offered to babysit. They shared the collective wisdom of humanity's greatest strength, community in adversity. Marcus learned to decode Arya's cries, recognizing which meant hunger, which meant discomfort from her developing bioluminescent organs, which meant she simply needed to be held. He modified a standard infant care unit to accommodate her unique biology, installing UV lamps for her skin and humidity controls for her respiratory system. When she developed a fever that no Zentari or human physician could diagnose, he sat with her for 5 days straight, monitoring every vital sign, adjusting treatments incrementally until the crisis passed. She thrived. By her first birthday, Arya was speaking in both English and Zentari. She could manipulate light through her bioluminescence, creating patterns that delighted the station's children. She had her father's stubborn determination and her mother's grace. She was, in every way, a bridge between worlds. Marcus documented everything. He published papers on hybrid child-rearing, on adapted nutrition, on the psychological development of mixed-species children. Other mixed couples, still rare but growing in number, reached out for advice. He became an unexpected expert, an advocate, a symbol. When Arya was 2, the Zentari Council sent an official delegation to Station Perseverance. They'd heard about the human who was successfully raising a hybrid child alone. They observed Marcus and Arya for 3 days, silent and judgmental in their crystalline robes. On the final day, the delegation leader, an ancient Zentari named Threshold, approached Marcus. "We were wrong," he said simply. "We believed your species too primitive, too short-lived, too emotional to handle such responsibility. We believed Lyra made a mistake." "And now?" Marcus asked, holding Arya close. "Now we see what we should have seen from the beginning. Humanity's strength isn't in your technology or your longevity. It's in your capacity to adapt, to endure, to love fiercely in the face of impossible odds. Threshold's eyes softened. You don't abandon your young. Not ever. Marcus felt the weight of those words. Is Lyra? She wishes to return if you'll allow it. The council was persuasive about her duties, but she never stopped fighting to come back. Marcus looked down at Arya, who was drawing light pictures in the air with her glowing fingertips. He thought about the sleepless nights, the moments of despair, the small victories. He thought about being abandoned and about choosing to love anyway. That's her decision, he said finally. But Arya comes first, always. Threshold nodded with something that might have been respect. Very human of you, Marcus Chen. Very human indeed. When Lyra's ship docked 3 days later, Marcus waited at the airlock with Arya. His heart was a storm of emotions. Anger, hope, fear, love. But as Arya saw her mother and reached out with luminescent hands, Marcus understood something fundamental about humanity's place in the cosmos. They didn't survive because they were the strongest or the smartest. They survived because they loved their children more than they feared the future. They survived because abandonment wasn't in their nature. Even when abandoned themselves, they stayed. As Lyra knelt before them, tears streaming down her opalescent cheeks, Marcus made his choice. Not for himself, but for the little girl who deserved both her parents. Welcome home, he said. Arya's bioluminescence flared brilliantly, illuminating them all.